on to the next question. It's a debate question 6. The background is an ICMA report. So the city commissioned a consultant to evaluate the Hermosa Beach Police Department operations, and the group was called the ICMA, and the report was released in August 2013. And I'll just really quickly hit the high points. On the previous alcohol harm study, there were 7 South Bay cities that bordered the ocean. Hermosa Beach ranked number 1 in violent crime. And then here we have, within this ICMA report, they ranked 6 neighboring communities to Hermosa Beach. Those communities are Lawndale, Hermosa, Redondo Beach, El Segundo, Torrance, and Manhattan Beach. Hermosa Beach ranked number 2 in violent crime within this ICMA report, and Lawndale was the city that beat us out. It was released in 2013. Since the report was released, in 2014, Hermosa Beach had 1.8 times the violent crime compared to Manhattan Beach. Also in 2014, we had 2.2 times the aggravated assault rate. 2014, also we had 12 times the Part 1 rape crime rate. And in 2014, we had 2.3 times the misdemeanor arrest rate compared to Manhattan, and 2.8 times the misdemeanor arrest rate compared to Redondo. And within the misdemeanor arrest rate, there were misdemeanor drunk arrests. In 2014, Hermosa had 4 times the misdemeanor drunk arrests compared to Manhattan Beach, and in 2014, 2.99 times the misdemeanor drunk arrests compared to Redondo. And the debate question: what is your opinion regarding the ICMA Police Operations Report for the Hermosa Beach Police Department? When you become a city council member, would you leave the downtown area to function as it is now? What staffing and enforcement strategies would you change in the downtown? And that would be for Justin.
Thank you, Al. I mean, what we've been doing down there has created huge problems for all of us. We have a system where the way we deploy our officers has resulted in several lawsuits from patrons downtown who have sued the city for getting injured when they were arrested, and lawsuits from officers who sued the city because they were injured in arresting somebody. So we need to fundamentally change how we do things. What the ICMA report says is a few different things. One, Hermosa has a high crime rate relative to cities with similar population size. Our police department is doing many things well, but there is room for improvement. The community in that report praised our police department's responsiveness and level of caring, and I echo that. So the police on the ground typically do quite a good job, but we do have resource constraints. We do have management issues that need to be resolved, that have not been resolved, and that have led to the problems that we have. I would do 3 things that are in the ICMA report. One is create a strategic plan to solve chronic policing problems in Hermosa. That is, be proactive rather than reactive. The ICMA report says we can do that with our current police staffing levels. The second is to change shift scheduling so teams of sergeants and officers work together consistently so that they can work to solve recurring and chronic problems that they face. And the last is create a downtown enforcement unit that consists of a sergeant, 4 officers, and 2 community service officers, and they will aggressively implement the late night action plan which the police department developed. That's a recommendation from the ICMA report. The question then becomes, how do you pay for it? And I have a plan to pay for it that I briefly discussed, which is cut energy costs at City Hall, bring in the hotels within our current restrictions so they don't overcrowd downtown any more than necessary, because that hotel tax comes straight to the city. It's one of our best revenue sources that we don't have to share with anybody. So when we talk about what our needs are, in this case in terms of police staffing, we need to couple that with a realistic conversation about how we pay for it.
Thanks, Justin. Ken?
I don't believe the report 100%, but I do believe in the majority of the report. The report also talks about reducing response calls for residents in Hermosa Beach, the calls that are deemed unimportant. I think all calls that go to the police are important. If someone has the thought process that they need to call the police, it's important to them. As a resident, you should receive the response from the police, not just we're not going to respond to that, it's not important. That's for throughout the community. I think what the report was trying to say is by cutting down on those calls, they could put police officers on other more important calls. One of the reasons many of us live here is because we have our own police and fire department. We're not part of the county. that's a positive to me, and you want that small town feel when you call them that somebody's going to respond. As to how to keep things in check downtown, our police department has been running with about 5 or 6 less officers than full staff recommended, and those staffing levels should be determined by the chief, and the council should make sure that the chief has the tools necessary to keep those officers there. One of the other problems we have is not just in the police department, but other functions in the city. We have experienced people leaving. They come here, work here for a couple of years, and then they move. We're losing the institutional knowledge of those workers, and we need to make sure that we figure out, A, why they're leaving, and B, keep them here. We need them here. You also need to get community involvement with volunteers, eyes, ears, calling when you see something. When all this happens, it's going to actually increase some of our numbers, so it's going to look like crime is getting worse, but if you are strengthening your enforcement, your numbers are going to go up.
Thanks, Ken. Jeff?
Yeah, what's clear from the report is that common assault are just that in Hermosa, common, and increasingly violent, especially assaults involving women. And I can't tell you, the number of those reports would talk about an incident that occurred while there was security for the facility standing right there doing nothing. More than one. So there is a shared responsibility for this that's not being taken. And there's also, it's partly a reflection of a societal problem as well that we have to acknowledge. I think a recent study, 23% of female college students said they experienced some form of unwanted sexual contact, often by force or while incapacitating. And then fueling the problem is the fact that college individuals in general, 40% will binge drink, which is 5 or more drinks in one session within a 30-day period. 51% admit to blacking out at least once. These young people become Hermosa's problem on a regular basis when they're down here, not only for the problems they cause, but they also serve as prey for predators and hardened criminals who also haunt our city. That's what's going on. That's the reality. They're there. And if it is shown, if we have shown anything, it's that we don't have enough boots on the ground to deal with the problem. We do not have enough people down there to do this, and we also can no longer be selective in our enforcement, which is another problem. So, we've got to admit it, and we've got to do something about it.
Thanks, Jeff. Trent?
I want to talk about reallocating the resources we do have so that it doesn't cost us any more money and we can solve the problem at the same time. We have fantastic neighborhoods all through Hermosa Beach, and we have a very few problem areas. Our neighborhood watch groups could be strengthened better than they are now with the help of the police department. We could have more neighborhood watch group meetings, better communication with them and the police chief and our police officers, so that really the neighborhoods, to a large extent can police themselves, because we really don't have that much problem there. And then we can give the officers, who can be in greater numbers with greater strength and more power and force opportunity, to deal with the real problem that we have, which is the late night problem down on the Pier Plaza. So really that's the bulk of what this report talks about and where most of the problems come from. And they're all, I read every violent crime report that Alan sent me, and there was a lot. And they all had the same story, more or less. People getting drunk and other intoxicants, and then bad things happening. And they're allowed to roam the streets and leaving that area. So I think we need more officers downtown, and we could reallocate those resources, and we could have stronger neighborhood watch groups in the areas that we don't have the problem, and we target the problem.
Thanks, Trent. Pete?
Thank you. The report says that 60% of demands are community problems, and as spoken to earlier, people rely on that 911, and it's sometimes that's all they have to turn to, and we respond. Police do, the fire department does. The other 40% is the serious crimes or emergencies, and downtown there are problems. If you look at the 4th of July, we bring in 30 extra law enforcement personnel to deal with that crowd. That's, we figure maybe around, say, 100,000 people. The last few years, that number's gone down to, the lifeguards say with all the action we've taken to curtail that, and it has worked. Probably we're down 30,000 people who no longer come to our city because we're not allowed to party there because of the police presence. And that's a key element, police presence. Our patrol officers down there are overwhelmed. I think they need to be more proactive and really get involved and try to, they see things that happen, and I think they need to engage and move those people along. This is a problem that's been going on there for a long time, and everybody says, well, everything's fine down there. Well, if you go down a drive around with them, it's really not okay. At a certain time of night, they're going to say they know exactly where the next party is because every weekend there's a party there. They all leave the plaza and go party somewhere else. So it gets really kind of spread out as the night goes on.
Pete, you can summarize?
But we do have a problem. I agree with the report. I think a detail that is familiar with what goes on there every weekend is important, but we also need to enlist other police personnel maybe to add to that detail downtown to really show a sign of strength. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Pete. Okay.